My name is Rudo Pasipanodya, and this is my story in my own words. It all started in 2011 when we had a miracle night with the man of God, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, in the National Sports Stadium in Zimbabwe. During that conference, the man of God asked us to write down our prayer requests and bring them on the last day of the conference. I did that, and I was still pretty young, so I just wrote a few stuff of what I wanted, some of which was not realistic during that time. And I went with my prayer request, and that was it. I continued with my education, and unfortunately, I failed on my first sitting for the ordinary level, and then I had to do a second sitting, and that's when I got my O-level subjects, excluding mathematics though. My parents wanted me to go for A-level, but I didn't want. I wanted to do something else. I was on the internet, and I remember seeing an advert for an open day for cabin crew by a certain airline. So I'll call this airline Airline A. Because I saw it quite early, I notified my father. According to him, it was a big risk because it was an open race. So it's not like you've been shortlisted or you've been invited. You're just going in blindly. And if they like you, they like you. And if they don't, then that's it. I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, but it just didn't happen. And then I talked to my mother about it. She ended up borrowing money, and I had to go by bus. I was successful, and I was invited for the assessment day the following day. Halfway through, I was eliminated, so I was devastated, but I decided to come the following day again because they were hosting another CV drop for ground staff. I dropped off my CV, and again I was successful for the assessment day the following day, and I made it through till the final interview. A week later, I think it was 5 days later, one of the girls sent me a message saying that she had received a text message from Airline A. I asked the other guys, which I had their numbers, and everyone had received those emails just except me. So it kind of got to me. I was really devastated. I cried my eyes out in bed. I just didn't want to do anything. I was literally just sleeping, eating. I was miserable. One of the girls, I had attended the interviews with Airline A. She was coming back to Zimbabwe. She was a Zimbabwean. She was coming back, but she had been invited for another interview with Airline B. I'll call it Airline B. So she gave me the email for Airline B to confirm my attendance, though my CV hadn't been shortlisted. So I got that email and just sent my invitation, my confirmation of attendance to something which I wasn't shortlisted for. And I just did it blindly, but now when I think of it, I know it was the God of my father. He was leading me, because in honest fact, if you were just the thought of sending in confirmation to something you haven't been invited to, it doesn't make sense. So I know that the God of my father was with me then, but back then it just didn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense because they sent me a confirmation for something that they hadn't shortlisted me for. So it was just happening. And then I woke up, I was really positive about it. I went for the Airline B assessment day. And to me, it was as if because I didn't manage to get in through to Airline A, then the God of my father, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, was showing me another route. So it was as if he was leading me to Airline B. I went there. The assessments for Airline B were much easier than the ones for Airline A, so I was quite confident that I would make it through. And everyone was going. A few people left. They didn't manage to make it through just after the grooming checks. So when it was my turn, before I even got there, one of the ladies smiled and she asked me how old I was. And I still remember smiling back and telling her I was 21. And then she smiled and she told me, we'll see you in 2 years' time because you're too young, and the recruitment age for our country is 23. So that was just it for me. I still remember breaking down in there, and it was my first time crying in front of all those people. So as I was walking out, the recruiter for Airline B told me that, I'll call it Airline C, that Airline C was having their assessment that week in the very same place, and that I should give it a go since I'm not South African, since I wasn't South African and I'd come a long way from Zimbabwe. So it was just from Norway that she offered that. And for me, with the knowledge I have of Airline C, I knew Airline C was a non-starter considering these other airlines, Airline A and Airline B. If I hadn't made it to Airline A and Airline B, my chances of getting into Airline C were close to zero. And also, considering Airline C is one of the best airlines, you're only shortlisted, they don't do open days. So it was, you only know where they're doing their assessments via invitation. It's by invitation only. I was devastated. It was just the worst. And I think that was one of the lowest points in my life. You know, you've come a long way and you're thinking, okay, God, you let me come all this way and you're gonna let me go back again without anything. For me, it didn't make sense. I tried to convince myself of the word of the man of God, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa. Some of the past sermons he had preached when he was telling me, I'm going to use my vernacular language for this, and he was saying, pawasvika apa hakuna chinhu chinongonzi chaitika kwauri. Mwari anenge aine chaari kuziva pamusoro pako, saka hapana chinhu chinongonzi chaitika. There is a reason behind, though you might not see it, but pane chinenge chiripo chakanakira iwo. So I tried to keep that in my mind, but considering my circumstances, it just didn't add up. Obviously, the God of Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa was with me, because when I reflect on it now, I realize that if it was just me, if it was up to me to go for that assessment day with Airline C, I wouldn't have even woken up. But obviously, he was guiding me and he was giving me the strength and the willpower to pursue it. So I woke up the following day dressed up, and of course, I left the house to go for the assessment with Airline C, which I wasn't invited to and which I hadn't even applied to. I still remember walking into the room, and you know, it's one of those places where you don't need anyone to tell you that you don't belong here. You just feel it for yourself. You can see it for yourself. And I could see people were dressed, they were on point, full makeup. The ladies were just on point. Everyone was smart, and I don't mean to sound racist, but it was a room full of white people. And as I walked in, I was like, okay, I think I should make a U-turn now. I should leave, because I was wearing my skirts and small heels without stockings, because obviously when you attend assessment days for airlines, you have to be on point, you have to be well groomed. I didn't have the stockings, I was just wearing my skirt and shoes. I had a white striped shirt, which was a bit gray, and a red jersey, my cousin brother's jersey, which you could see that it's a man's jersey, and it was red in color with patches here and on the shoulders. So I was the one standing out, I was the odd one out in the room. And I still remember trying to convince myself to go on and sit down, because when you look at it, I wasn't part of them. It wasn't my place to be there. So I went and sat down, and though it was freezing, I still remember it was freezing. I had to take off my jersey so I could at least try to blend in with them. And then they handed us forms, and on the forms you had to fill in your personal details, but on the top part of the form there was a reference number part. We had to fill in the reference number they sent you when they sent you the invitation to the assessment. But thing is, because I wasn't invited to the assessment, I was just gate crushing. I didn't have the reference number. So I still remember just sitting there thinking, okay, what should I do now? And everyone was busy filling in things out, and I was clueless. So I started filling out the other information, like my name, my surname and stuff. And then all of a sudden the recruiter was like, on the reference number, if you by any chance have forgotten your reference number, just write yes. So I wrote yes on on the reference number part, and chances are I was the only one who wrote yes. Everyone, of course, knew their reference number. And I filled in my form as well. And when you fill out your form, you're supposed to go and drop your CV along with your form. And then they were going to ask you a few questions. It was just like a 2-minute thing with the interviewer. So I waited my turn as well. And when I got there, the only thing she asked me was, when I handed her my CV, when she looked at the cover page, she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, Rudo, that's so Zimbabwean." And yeah, I smiled and told her that I'm from Zimbabwe and I just come to South Africa for these interviews. So after that, I dropped off my CV. She didn't ask me the basic questions which you're supposed to ask, like, why do you want to be cabin crew? Why do you want to work for this airline? Why do you like this airline so much? She didn't ask me that. It was just that small talk conversation. And so before we left, she had said, we come back after an hour. If your name is highlighted, that means you're staying. And if your name is not highlighted, that means you have to try again next time. So I went, and since I didn't have anyone to talk to, I was just sitting alone, just there for 1 whole hour. And when the hour was up, we went to check and there was a list of the names. So first, when we did the CV drop, we were around 120, in between 120 and 130 interviewees. And after that first elimination, when we went back to check the highlighted names, only 50 people remained. And then she divided us into 2 groups of 25 each. And then, so imagine from 100, almost 130 people, only 50 remained for the assessment, and that was not even the final interview. It really didn't make sense to me that I was actually going through with this thing, considering that I wasn't invited. I was just literally there. And when you look at me, when you're working for an airline, the most important thing is grooming. And to look at my grooming part, it was not even perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect, because even my hair wasn't neatly tied up. It was just hanging, and there was a lot of undergrowth, so it was just a mess. And I was just letting it fall over my shoulders. So yeah, everything kept going, and that's when it started clicking. And I was thanking God. I still remember thanking the God of my father, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, for pushing me through. We had an English test, and from the 50 who were shortlisted, only 15 managed to sit for the English test. And of course, we all passed the English test. We were given slots now for the final interview, which was the one-on-one. And my slot was on the Saturday, because the assessment day was a Thursday. My slot was on Saturday at 10 a.m. So we finished at around 7. That's when everything finished, and I had to take the long walk home. And because my cousin brother was living like an hour from the city, it was quite a long bus trip. And when everyone was asking me what happened with your interview, how was it, all I said was, it was perfect. I've been successful, and obviously I hadn't even sat for the final interview, but I still remember the words of my father, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, when he said, regardless of what you do, regardless of the circumstances around you, you have to try and maintain a positive confession. Confess the positive. So though everything was against me, everything was just not where it should be, nothing was in place, the tables were turned in a totally different area, I kept those words in me, so I tried to maintain a positive confession. We're supposed to go with photos, right? Casual photos, formal photos to the interview. And on the Saturday of the interview, I remember going with my brother to his workplace, and I asked this other guy to take pictures of me with my phone so that when I go into the city, I get them printed out. So I left I got on the bus at around 9:15, and it's 10 o'clock exactly, the time I'm supposed to be having my final interview in the hotel. That's the time I arrived at the bus station. And the walk from the station to the hotel was around 20 minutes. And also considering I didn't have my photos, it was just not adding up. So I asked one of my friends to send me credit. So I tried calling the recruiter, and when I told her my name, she was like, "Oh, you're here already, I'll be coming down." And I told her, "No, I'm not, I've run late." And then she was like, "What's the problem?" I told her I wasn't feeling too well. And she told me, "Okay, when do you expect to be here?" And considering the trip I had the long walk, and also I wanted to do the photos, I just told her maybe 20 minutes. She went quiet for a while, and also I didn't know what to say. And then she was like, your interview is supposed to be 1 hour, but if I do 40 minutes for you, it's a disadvantage to you. And if I try to be fair to you and I give you the whole hour, then it's a disadvantage for the next person who has the 11 a.m. slot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a slot for 5. I'm gonna sacrifice an hour from my time. When I do the final interview for the last person of today, I'll give you another hour. I'll sacrifice an hour from my time and do the interview for you and give you the full hour. I was just speechless, because now from what they wanted, I literally didn't have anything except my high school certificates and my passport copy. I didn't have the passport photos that they wanted. I just went back to the hotel. I sat there. I asked one of the guys where he did his photos, and he told me it was someplace, it was quite far and very pricey. So I just gave up on it. And I waited my turn. I went down and she hugged me when I got in. And then she asked me if I wanted water, because I was shaking, like visibly you could see that I was shaking. Even my teeth were gnashing. She kept asking me stuff, but honestly, I don't remember everything she asked me. I don't remember what I said, but all I remember was I was shaking for the entire hour. On your CV, if you have a gap of 6 months and you don't state what you were doing, they have to ask you, they need to know. So when she asked me, I told her that I was resitting for my exams for my high school certificate. And then she looked at me and she was like, you know that I can't do your interview, right, with just an O-level certificate. The minimum requirement with our education here is advanced level, which is A-level, and I didn't have that. So I was just speechless now. I literally didn't know what to say. And then that's when I told her I have a ZIMSEC certificate back home, so maybe I could send that to you because it has the other subject. And she was like, okay, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna do the interview for you. And since you said you're going back home on Friday next week, then you can send the certificate to me, because I'm gonna go to Pretoria first. During the interview, because I didn't have the photos, she was like, okay, the other photos I can do without them. You can as well send me a soft copy, but what I need is the passport copies. If you're successful, then your visa application won't go through because I don't have your passport photos. We finished the interview and she was super nice. She walked me out. And when you look back on it, considering the other interviews I'd had with Airline A and Airline B, they were so professional. So for Airline C, it's way bigger and better than these previous 2 airlines. So you expect them to be more strict and more, the way they are with you, it should be more professional. They're just doing their job and leaving. But the interviewer, she went out of her way and she tried to make me feel at home as much as possible, which is probably not even in her job description when she's doing the recruitment. So I went up expecting to see the other girl. We went, she told me where we're supposed to go. So we went to Waterfront to get the photos done there. Of course, I didn't have enough money to do the photos, considering the place is it's more uptown, so it's a bit more expensive. And also I hadn't had the other photos done, so we decided to take them there. And I didn't have enough money, so she took money from her own pocket to pay for my photos. And I'm a competitor, we both want the same job. And when you think of it again, it's just grace. Because how can someone you don't know, you didn't even talk to, like all through the process of the assessments, you've just met like an hour ago, and they're already helping you out and trying to make your life more comfortable and pushing you further to your destiny. So we did the photos, and because it was a Saturday, the bus service was gonna end a bit earlier. And from Waterfront to go into the city, it was gonna take, the bus wasn't gonna be, if I took the bus from Waterfront to the city and then walked to the hotel, I would probably miss my bus then from the city to home. We went inside the mall again. She went to the ATM, she withdrew some money, went with me, we took a taxi. She paid the taxi to take me from Waterfront to the hotel, from the hotel to the bus station. It was God who was with me throughout the way, because wherever I disqualified myself, there was something pushing me forward and qualifying me again. Whenever I didn't have the strength to soldier on, someone was on the other side holding my hand to push me a step further. So all of this was well scripted according to the God of the man of God, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa. So I went to the hotel, I dropped off my photos, and we went, the taxi driver was literally speeding. We went to the bus station, and as soon as we got to the bus station, the bus was leaving. So he had to race again to the next station, which of course he wasn't paid for, but he took it upon himself to take me there. A few days later, I was leaving to come back to Zimbabwe. I came, I sent the email with the O-level certificate to the recruiter, and I waited. Monday at around 9, I got a call from the recruiter for Airline C, and she was telling me that I had to redo all my photos, and also the certificate I had was O-level, and the ones I had sent again to her were ordinary level. She wasn't going to use the one which I sent the second time. She was just going to try and push my application with the very first certificate I'd given her at the interview in Cape Town. Tuesday we went for the service. I was still down because deep inside I was telling people I got a job with Airline C, and imagine if I wasn't successful, what were they going to think of me? What I remember is I'm going to use also my vernacular language. The man of God was like, I quote, ibva pana pane nyasha dzakawanda dzotokabva nadzo panapo unoenda nadzo kumba kwako dzonokushandira futi ikoko, saka takura nyasha kubva nadzo panapa uchienda nadzo kumba. And for me that was a faith booster. My faith was just like on now. I could feel it in my spirit. I was more positive. I had hope again, which I didn't have. But because of that sermon from the man of God, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, I began to have faith again. I started believing in myself, and I believed that a miracle could happen, because when you look at it all, I wasn't qualified for it. So if something was to happen, it was going to be a miracle. Then the following day at around 9, that's when I received a call from a representative of Airline C, and she told me that I was successful. My application had been successful and I'd been accepted, and they'd sent me a contract and a few details that I had to fill in, and yeah, all the other information I needed. So I still remember screaming my ears out, and the person on the other end of the line was just laughing. And after a while, she was like, are you done now? Can I verify a few details? So yeah, it was quite something. And yeah, that's when the whole process began now of me going to work for Airline C. And when you look back on it, I wrote about Airline C when I was only 16 years old. So if you remember, I mentioned that the man of God, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa, they had instructed us on Miracle Night to write down our prayer requests. And the airline that I had mentioned that I wanted to work for was exactly the one that accepted my request, defying all odds 5 years later. So it's like everything was well scripted, all the ups and downs, everything which was pulling me down, it was all scripted to lead me to this destiny which I had prayed for. And to think it's a prayer that I wrote years back and I had even forgotten about it. It's just out of this world that it's being answered right now after 5 years. So it's just, when you think of it, and even the whole journey through, imagine going through Airline A, Airline B, only to end up with Airline C, when Airline C is the most advanced, it's the best. It's more difficult to get into Airline C than even into Harvard University. So it's just, it's out of this world. You can't comprehend it with your mind that something like this can happen. So I owe it all to the prophets of God, Prophet Emmanuel and Prophetess Rudo Makandiwa, for taking me this far. And also when I think of it, it's what has sustained me during this process. I've been working away from home in another foreign country for Airline C, is the teachings they gave me throughout when I was young. I was nurtured by the word, and because I was nurtured by the word, when I went out there, I wasn't influenced by the world. I was influenced by the word of the man of God that he taught me when I was still young, the instructions of the woman of God, Prophetess Rudo Makandiwa. So it's what has sustained me throughout now. It's not only about the job, but also what is sustaining me throughout this journey. So this is my story of how the prophets of God, Prophet Emmanuel Makandiwa and Prophetess Rudo Makandiwa, transformed me. They nurtured me ever since I was young till now to where I am. When you think of it, where I was disqualified, where I disqualified myself, the grace upon the man of God, of course, qualified me. Where I didn't have the qualifications to push me through, it was by grace again. I was qualified for it. Where I didn't have the strength to soldier on, I had divine helpers every step of the way. Whenever one of the divine helpers ended, it was as if they were taking my hand and placing it in the hand of another divine helper. So my journey was well scripted, and I'm grateful. I know I probably wouldn't be here. And also, I'm grateful for the teachings I got ever since I started coming to UFIC. It's what has nurtured me into the person that I am today, because I probably wouldn't survive in this world if I hadn't had these teachings ever since I was young.